Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video, which is a full in-depth review of the brand new Mark 8 Golf. And this follows on from my first impressions video that went live last week. Now I've had this 1.5 ETSI mild hybrid style version for 4 days now, and I think I've got to know it quite well. So this video will cover in detail areas like the economy of the mild hybrid engine, the very controversial styling, the build and material quality and how that compares with its predecessors. We also look at the technology inside the car. We'll have a good close look at the interior, and we also take it for a drive. Now, I've learned things as I've gone along with this video, so I've had to drop bits in here and there. So it's not probably as smooth as it normally is, but hopefully these will make the video the most detailed, the most accurate, and the most honest review of the Mark 8 to drop so far. So, without any further ado, let's see if mild hybrid technology in a petrol Golf really does give it diesel levels of fuel economy. Now, because it's based on the MQB platform, which is what the Mark 7 and 7.5s were based on, there's not an awful lot of difference in the way the car drives. But in this example, we've got the mild hybrid system. Now, mild hybrid is nothing like the traditional hybrid, which can power you along the road. What it does, though, is that it stores energy through braking, and that then can be used to power the accessories and everything. So basically the engine can cut off instead of just coasting, which is what a lot of the older gen cars did. The big question is, will it finally challenge a diesel engine when it comes to economy? Because I'm a big fan of diesel, because, you know, it's very hard to top sort of 50 miles per gallon in any sort of petrol car of any sort of size anyway. You can do it in an up GTI if you're very steady. So what we're going to do today is do my commute, which I've done now for about 6 months, and I've done it in 5 months in my Leon TDI 150, so same horsepower, same platform car. I get 50 if I'm lucky and I stick resolutely to the speed limit. So we're going to do that today to keep everything level. I know there'll be trip computer variances, but this is the same platform car, so hopefully they'll be pretty even if there are inaccuracies over real world consumption. So without any further ado, let's go to work. Okay guys, we're 7 miles in now and we're on 49.6 and we're just approaching the motorway. 49.6 at 50 to 60 isn't really that amazing, because it's not really the speeds where cars are anything other than perfectly efficient. When you get on the motorway, you do feel the drag of a car, and that brings the fuel consumption down quite a lot, and that's the problem for me, in that I do a lot, most of my journey is motorway, and if I go quite fast I just get petrol MPG out of my Leon. Can I get diesel MPG out of this petrol car is the question. So we're just joining the M40 North now at Leamington Spa. We're on 50.3. So I'm going to set the radar cruise up to 70 now. I think let's press set and then click up to 70. Okay. Let's see how we get on. So it's gone down already to 49.7. It's picking up this car in front of me, so I just need to move out of its way and let it drive itself, quite literally with the lane assist, although the legalities of doing that in the UK are a bit unclear, taking your hands off the wheel for any length of time. Okay, well, we're just approaching my exit on the M42. We're 22 miles in and an average speed of 43 miles per hour. I cannot believe the MPG. We've topped 51.2. And it's only going to get better from this point onwards because we're not doing motorway speeds. 51.4 now. The engine's just switched off as we're approaching the slip. I'm going to indicate. So we're just running with no engine now, but everything feels normal. The engine's so quiet, it makes no difference. You don't even know it's switching off. You can only tell by the rev counter, which is on 0. I thought 1,000 RPM for idle was trick, but no. This is it, and we've just gone up to 52.4 now. So that's, I'm trying to comprehend what that means, particularly for diesels, because this car's only done, I think, 130 miles now. That's not even run in. So what's it going to be like when it's run in? We're going to see high 50s. That's just incredible. Okay, now let's talk about the design of the Mark 8 Golf. I'm no expert in this area, admittedly, but I think I know how I like a Golf to look, and I'm not sure that's like a Mark 8. Let me explain why. So believe it or not, every panel down the side of the car is new. I was surprised when I noticed this, but the wheel arches, the lips are thicker and they're actually concave. They go in ever so slightly. These are perfectly flat and that little bit thinner. Going onto the door, we've got a mirror that's dropped down an inch, so it's no longer in the window line. Probably better for aerodynamics and wind noise. We've got a swage line on all panels that is higher. So check that out. It's only, well, it's not subtle, but when you notice it, you notice it. So it's about only 2/3 of the width of it from the swage up to the window now on the 8. And it goes through the door handle before it just missed it. Back door's different. This part here, I'm sure there's more of a kink. I think it's called a Hofmeister kink. Yeah, there's definitely more of a kink there, which means the quarter panel is different as well. So the window line is different. Some people were saying the window line was the same, but it's not. If you look at the wheel arch on the 8, it goes into the door. It's that much thicker. On the 7 and 7.5, it misses the door. So that's definitely different. So they had the opportunity to redesign, looks like every panel, and yet it looks, at first glance, just like that, which is odd. And that makes the front look a bit weird because the front is very different to these two. You couldn't really tell these two apart, but you'd never mistake an 8 for a 7.5. But I'm pretty sure it's all been done for aerodynamics. So you could say it's another area of the car that's been loused up chasing lower emissions. Golf 8 is a lot better when it comes to aerodynamic drag than these two, and that's probably why it's so efficient. So yeah, it may not look as good as the older two, but there are savings to be had when it comes to CO2. Or just going by an ID3 where it can probably look quite happy and do 0 emissions. I've got no issues with the back though. The back looks like how I'd expect these two to evolve. Okay, it looks like a T-Roc, but I think it looks a bit better than the T-Roc because it's a bit less fussy. Quite like the chiselling here. Yeah, it's not bad. Obviously with the more powerful versions we should get some proper exhaust, not these hideous silver things that pretend to be exhaust, but this is only a low power model, and it's the same on a 7.5. I think you get that fakery down there. Wheels, as ever, look too small. This is a 17-inch wheel on quite a big car, so we've got 18s on this TCR, we've got 19s on the R, so they're just way too inset into the arch. But yeah, it is a low model, so hopefully when the GTI comes we'll have a better looking front, we'll have bigger wheels, and hopefully it might even look as good as these two bad boys. Okay, next let's talk about the quality of the Mark 8 Golf, because being a Volkswagen, it's quite important. It's what distinguishes the brand from other lesser brands and partially justifies why you have to pay more for them. There's been a lot of chat about the Mark 8 Golf on forums and in videos that the quality has come down a lot from the 7.5, and this particularly serious looking chap from somewhere in Eastern Europe has made this video about the quality. It's had 133,000 views, so that's some serious interest in it. But I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. He makes some reasonable points, but I've made a list of his key points and I just want to talk you through them with this car. Now firstly, he mentions the bonnet stay. So yeah, okay, we've gone from a telescopic strut on the Mark 7.5 to a manual strut on here. So let's just start off. Firstly, the good news is we have the bonnet release on the right hand side. Quite often when Volkswagen give us manual stays for the bonnet, they also keep the release on the left hand side. Look at Seat, my Leon is that way, so it's great to have this on the correct side at least. Now what I noticed from his video was that the opening of the bonnet had changed as well. Now struts are really handy telescopic ones when you're filming, because you just let go now and carry on filming. So you have to use two hands to put that up. So there's the manual stay there, you have to fold that up and clip it there. Slightly annoyingly and smacking you in the face is there is the bit where the telescopic one used to mount. Unfortunately, I've had a look behind the soundproofing. Because this is a brand new bonnet, there isn't anywhere to mount the strut on the bonnet anymore, so unfortunately you're going to have to look at that all the time you own the car, because you can't fit one. What he didn't mention though is that things have gone up in the quality stakes when it comes to keeping the bonnet closed when you're driving. So not, instead of just one bonnet catch, we've now got two, which is a bit like an R8, I think. So there's one and there's the other, and that explains why the opening of the bonnet has changed. I'll just show you on this 7.5 the difference. So that's what you can do with a telescopic strut, and there's the mounting point there, which is exactly the same. So it just shows you these cars are very closely related, but unfortunately this bit doesn't exist on that bonnet because it's a completely different bonnet. There is the single bonnet release, so you get two of those now, but you have to put your bonnet up manually, so swings and roundabouts really. I think his next point was about the door handles. So since Mark IV they've had a separate piece that covers up actually a barrel, which is an emergency way of getting into the car if your battery goes flat. And if you've got one of the Korean batteries from about 2016 to 2017 on a Mark VII, you probably might have experienced this already. Well, he was saying that now you can see the barrel and that's cost cutting. Well, I'm not convinced, because it's a really fiddly process to get this off, to be able to get into the car with an emergency blade, and they've just taken that out of the equation now to make it easier to live with. What he didn't mention is that now the handles have got lights, really cute little lights. I don't know if you can see it in there, and they look brilliant at night. So again, swings and roundabouts. What else did he say? Locker missing, right? Well, yes, okay, on the 7.5s there is a locker here, so you can pull this down, put some stuff in it, but I don't really use it much at all. It's quite possible that it wasn't cost cutting. It may be that there's no room behind it because some of the electronics have got control modules that are behind there. What else have we got? The unlined glove box. Well, can't really argue with that. So instead of a flock lining like the door bins, they're still flock lined. These are hard plastic, but I don't know, what do you put in there that's going to rattle? Gloves? Handbooks? I don't know. You can always get some pads there to sort it out for nothing, peanuts. Some people get very excited about the frameless mirror on 7.5 and I think the later 7, so that's pretty frameless, not completely. What we've got in this one, this is quite an early 7, so yeah, that's got the big thick frame around it. What have we got on the 8? I don't think it's as bad as the 7. No, it's much closer to the 7.5 than it is to the 7's big thick frame, so no, can't see that argument. What else did he say? Number 6, cover on console lost, but you gain a trick cup holder. That's my notes. So yes, on the 7.5 you have that sliding cover. On here, oh my god, there's no cover, but instead of a cup holder that's not that brilliant, you actually have this thing there which is flexible. So yes, you've lost the cover, but you've actually gained a more useful cup holder. So again, swings and roundabouts. Auto lights, displays. Alright, yes, okay. He says that all the use of screens is to save cost, and I'm sure there is an element of that, but it's what people want. You could say that an old television with a cathode ray tube, you remember the old massive ones, if you're under the age of probably 30 you may not, but TVs until 10 to 15 years ago were big boxes, very, very expensive to make, using very, very expensive bits of technology, but TFT screens, completely stopped that, and now suddenly we have TVs that are pretty much wafer thin. I don't see anybody selling cathode ray TVs as a quality alternative to TFT, and I think it's true with this. The technology that was in use is now redundant. This is what people expect. I think he talks about the headlight switch, but auto lights are really what most people just set the lights to and then forget about them. So it makes sense to just make it a button like that, because it's just something people don't use, and I'm pretty sure Volkswagen have done some research on that. As for plastic quality, I honestly do not have an issue with this. This is way better than T-Rock. I was worried we're going to get a T-Rock hard plastic, so basically this level of plastic all over the car, but no, that's lovely, especially in the warmth. That's nice. Got this on the door cards, which you shouldn't take for granted. Flock line door bins, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, this isn't the best, but I think it's probably a good time to remind us what 7's like, because I've never really been wowed by the interior quality of a 7. Okay, well, we've got actually a lot of piano black, but then he's going on about how he doesn't like piano black, so what can I say? Yeah, maybe this is better. It's not as good as this, it's not soft, but I don't know, personal preference. Some people may prefer that strip that runs right across the Mark 8's dashboard. So again, swings and roundabouts. It's certainly a much more stylish dashboard than in those cars. It's great, and the position of the display is way better. This is a reason why I'd buy a Leon over a Golf, because the Leon last gen had the screen here, the Golfs had them down here, and this is so much more better placed for using it. 7s, the early ones, didn't have anything at the back of the wing. It was just an unpainted area that used to reflect on the door and look utterly shocking. They kind of resolved that with later 7s and 7.5s, and we have a plastic liner on the back of the wing. So they do know what they're doing. One thing that's bugged me since 7s is how badly mounted the wings are. But trust me, it ain't a Mark 8 thing, that. I think that's marginally worse. Let's see if they get better with age or worse. Oh yeah, that's good. So it's probably something to do with crash protection or something like that. But yeah, overall quality, I think, is where we expect it to be for a Volkswagen. Okay, I've had the car for a few days now, and there are some other quality issues that have come to my attention that I want to talk about now. But let's firstly start off with the door handles, because at the time of filming the original bit, I didn't realise these were a completely different design of door handles. So they pivot all the way from the front to the back, while on the 7 and 7.5 they don't. This bit is fixed to the body, and this is the bit that traditionally holds the barrel. So if you look carefully, you can still see the barrel fixed onto the body there, but the handle moves away from it. And if you put a cap over there that was separate, that had to be popped off to get to the barrel, which is for the emergency key we've got here, there is a good chance some ham-fisted owner would do something with the handle, the cap would fall off, and they'd make a video saying that the quality was really bad. So I totally understand why they've kept that simple. It's also really nice to have easy access to the emergency key as somebody who deals with a lot of flat batteries. So that's how easy it is, and that takes seconds to pop out of the original key. And you might find not just a flat battery on the car or a flat battery on the remote. Sometimes you can park in areas where there's high levels of radio interference and your remote won't work. So I think that's good. And also the puddle lights are really cool as well, so I can't see how that is cheap. Now, when I was driving in rain yesterday, I noticed that the wiper on the driver's side was hitting the A-pillar rubber. that's definitely not right. So that's just a mistake with this car that will be easily sorted. You can't say that's a quality issue with the Mark 8. It's just probably an early model thing that can be easily sorted by the dealer. There is one other thing, and the more I've learned about cars, the more I try and understand why things happen, because quite often there's a reason other than saving money. Now, I've never known a Golf where you can do this. Put your hand up behind the dash without having to remove a tray from underneath it. Now, I'm sure a lot of people go, oh my God, they've deleted the tray, they're saving 3 cents. Think about the technology in that car and all the heat, all those electronics are producing. They need to get air, and if they're in an enclosed dashboard, they wouldn't be able to breathe as well as they can do now. So I'm pretty sure that's why that is. I thought I'd mention that because if I didn't mention it, somebody else would, and I'm sure they'd come probably to the conclusion that it was to save money. Okay, now we're going to talk about the technology within the dashboard of Golf 8. I'm going to try not to cover what I covered in the first impressions video, but I'm not going to be able to cover everything either because there's just so much to it. But these are the key points. Now, the most controversial thing is the deletion of the climate control knobs, which we've known and loved since Mark III Golf. They moved to this screen here, which has got a shortcut button just there. Okay, it's not particularly friendly to use while you're driving, and the reason it's green is because I've configured it green by fiddling around, so it doesn't have to be green. Yeah, so you don't have to come use this while you're driving, because once you program it to auto, you can just use these slider controls here to adjust the temperature, and they're really easy to use while you're driving. You can feel the boundary of it there, and they're about 3 degrees up from top to bottom, so have no fear about that. That is actually probably a step up from the knobs, I think, because I can feel that without looking. So yeah, I like that a lot. We've got wireless CarPlay, which is pretty trick. So we've got the wireless phone charger down here, which is quite handy because wireless CarPlay does sap your battery. So yeah, once you set it up, you never really have to touch it. You put your phone in the car, and that's what you get. And the screen resolution actually is much, much better. Now, the beauty of CarPlay is that it makes the whole thing a lot more familiar. So if you've got a 7.5 and you use CarPlay, because it does have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, what's it called, App Connect, and you've got a digital dashboard, or even if you haven't got a digital dashboard, you can just leave these as they are as gauges. You don't have to mess with them. So then you've kind of replicated the interface that you're used to. And apart from climate, which as I said is no great shakes because you can do that quite easily, I would feel instantly at home here. So yeah, it's not as different as they probably want you to think. My lay-on is digital dash, Apple CarPlay. It's very similar. But there's a lot more to this. If you want to get into it, you don't have to. Okay, so what else have we got? Yeah, let's show you in ambient lighting business. So we go back to the car main menu, and I think it's in background. So you don't have to have green, there's red. Blue is quite cool though, and 2 different colours, so let's try that. Yeah, that's a bit better. So that's good. There is some trick ambient lighting in this car as well, I believe, which I'll try and show you. I'll drop some footage of it at night because it doesn't get dark till about 9 o'clock, 9:30 right now. A bit of an issue is that the USB ports, which I've only just got used to finding in cars reliably, have changed. They've gone to USB-C, which is much smaller, but it means they can go in either way round and they're more efficient. Problem is, a lot of stuff I've got doesn't fit. Thank God for wireless phone charging is all I can say, because I would have been in deep trouble without being able to charge my phone. So bear that in mind, you might need adapters to plug stuff in. There were a few things that I forgot to cover in that original footage, so let's put that right now because these are quite important. First up is the new digital info display. So this is much more configurable than it is on 7.5. So you've got a few different formats you can flick through. This one's speed, this one's a traditional one, this one is for sort of front assist and travel assist, this one is full screen map, which is really cool, and this one is speed. So if you're driving in Switzerland, that's probably the one you're going to use. Now, when I said this is traditional, if you like to keep it simple like this, because some people will, this will be too much of a shock, that's fine. But if you want to configure what sits in the gauges, you can also do that. So if you want fuel consumption in there, and if you want a gear indicator in there, you can have that, and that's really cool. And that applies to the other screens as well. So if we go into, well, they're there as well in that screen, and they're also there on the maps. But as I said, if you want full screen map, you can just get rid of that as well if you want it to be lovely and clear. So yeah, that I think is a massive, massive step forward. And there's no issues with reflections or anything like that. I've been driving it in bright sunlight and it's been absolutely spot on. While we talk about screens, yes, you do get fingerprints on this screen, but you also get that on 7.5. I can guarantee you, just keep a microfiber in the car and they wipe off with no issues. Another little bit of trick stuff in here is the interior lights. So look at that. There's nothing to say that's how you turn them on or off, but that's mega cool. I mean, come on. Oh, and they're dimmable as well. Wow. Full brightness. Let's get full brightness. That's full brightness. That's a bit less. That's even less. Again, nice little touch. We dealt with voice control in the first video, but what I didn't cover was the fact you don't have to touch the button. You can command voice control by doing this. Hello, Volkswagen.
What can I do for you?
I'm hot.
Sure, it will get cooler at the front right shortly.
So again, that's even better. You don't have to touch any buttons. Another thing is with the nav, I went into High Street and all that rubbish. You don't need to do that. So let's try this. Hello, Volkswagen.
What would you like to do?
Take me to Banbury.
Please say the full address, starting with the city.
Banbury.
Did you mean Banbury?
Yes.
Please say the name of the street.
Centre.
Have a good journey.
So that cuts out all the other bits like the street name and the street. So that's really good. The other thing is it knows which seat you're in. So if you notice when I said I'm hot, it said we're going to make the front right cooler. Well, watch this.
Please drive slowly.
Because when you get in the passenger seat and you say, hello, Volkswagen.
What can I do for you?
I'm hot.
Sure, it will get cooler at the front left shortly.
It knows that the voice is coming from this side of the car. So that, I think, is super bloody cool. So now let's talk about the interior, not the technology side of it. So let me just turn the ignition off before it goes flat. Okay, changes over Mark 7.5 are that this now is not fabric, the A-pillar trim, it is plastic, but it's quite a nice plastic. I find these can get quite dirty, so when it's fabric, it's not very easy to clean, so it's no big deal. You honestly do not notice that when you're driving, and as I say, it's quite a nice plastic. Some of them can be really hard, non-textured. We've got really nice floor mats. I know that's stupid, but if people are talking about there being cost-cutting, why have we got mats that have got not only a silver stripe but also silver stitching? So that's quite a nice touch, much nicer than sort of a plain grey mat. If you really want to feel the quality in this car, play with these, because these are beautiful. So if you want the air to go left, you move it to the left. If you want it to go to right towards the driver, move it to the right, and then right at the end of it, they close. And that, you want to feel those. I can't really get it over on video, but they are lovely. I was a bit worried about the location of them down there, but they do work quite fine. There was a whistling when I got the car, which might have been the vent open slightly or something, or maybe the car just adapting to being used because it was a brand new, like just like 30 miles on the clock or something like that when I picked it up. It hasn't done that today, so I think that might have just been a blip, but it was a bit annoying. Yeah, it sounded like a kettle boiling. But yeah, I think that's resolved now. You can get the seats nice and low, which you can't take for granted. That, for me, is excellent. I'm sure if you're really short, you can get it nice and high as well. The grab handles are damped. And if you look at the rear one there, some cars have got a hook here, but on that one, it's actually within the handle. I can't remember if that's 7.5 anyway. But yeah, we've still got the hook there if you want to hang your jacket up and go and sell some double glazing. This is a bit annoying. So because everything sort of does itself, you know, you can drive with your feet off the pedals quite safely in this car if you've got the cruise control working. I like to put my feet back under the seat like that, just for a bit of comfort really. But when I got in the car first, I had the seat quite a bit further back, which meant if you're really tall, you've got problems because there's this box here. And this apparently is where, well, it's a battery for the mild hybrid system where the electricity is stored that runs the engine when it's, runs everything else by the engine when it's off. And on left-hand drive cars, guess where that is? Yep, there. So on right-hand drive cars, they've left it in the same position, which really, if you're really tall, and you're probably going to have to be about like 6'6" or something, you might find that a bit annoying. What else have we got? Oh yeah, all right, need to get in the back for this, so bear with. Okay, right, bearing in mind I've put the seat in some Giants position. We've got a mobile phone storage slot there, and that's probably like your traditional map pocket, but who has maps these days anyway? So that's probably like a tablet pocket, and that's for your phone there, so that's a nice touch. And there we have this digital climate control display, although it doesn't really seem to be working, but it could be something I've done or it's just taken a bit of time to boot up. Anyway, now for the bit I've been looking forward to. Let's go and drive the Golf 8 on some wonderful Warwickshire country roads. Okay, firstly let's talk about the technology that affects the driving of the Mark 8 Golf, and in particular the mild hybrid system within this ETSI model that we have here. It's nothing like a traditional hybrid which uses electricity to power the car, to propel it. The mild hybrid system turns the engine off and then runs all, like everything else, power steering, air conditioning, with electricity that it's harvested from braking or from coasting, that it's stored in the battery here under the seat. And it works really well because firstly the engine's so smooth that you don't notice it whether it's on or off, and also it works really well because it doesn't use a starter motor to restart the engine. That's a real pain with start-stop systems because that, you can really feel it kicking in, and it doesn't do that. It only uses the starter motor when the engine's cold to start the engine. Once it's warmed up, it uses a very special alternator that can drive the crankshaft, which is super cool. You just don't notice it. There's a little sign on the dashboard saying Eco. That can mean the engine's off, or it can mean that it's using cylinder deactivation, or it can mean that when the engine's warming up, it won't turn the engine off, but it'll let it idle because it likes the engine to warm up before it can turn it off, and then it can use the belt alternator starter to fire it up. So yeah, it's super cool. You've seen my MPG figures earlier. I reckon off a motorway the effect of it would be even greater. It's been in use on the Audi A6 and A7 now for a couple of years, but they're actually big heavy cars, so I reckon the effect on this car will be much more obvious. Other technology we've got is lane assist, which is a bit more advanced than it was in 7.5. It vibrates when it's working. I think it's working now. When you go over the white line, it can read the edge of the road now, even though it's not got a white line. It can read barriers and stuff like that, so it's a bit cleverer. It's still not perfect. I think maybe they do that on purpose so we don't depend on it. You know, it's still quite a long way over the white line then, but yeah, it's still a good thing to have, and I don't think I'd turn it off, to be honest. Other technology is adaptive cruise control, but the next level is, so with adaptive cruise, you set the cruise, say now we're doing 50, that's the speed limit here, so let's get it up to 50. If you came up to a 40-mile-an-hour zone, the car would just sail through. But what this car does is read the road signs and adapts the speed limit to suit. So it's telling me now there's a 40-mile-an-hour zone coming up, and it will slowly bleed off some of the speed. It's quite a way off, but let's see what happens when we get there. Also on twistier roads, it will tell you there's a bend coming up, and it will slow the car down automatically for the bend, even though the speed limit allows you to go faster. Bit of a tricky one, that. It doesn't seem to work all that well. Anyway, we're hitting the 40 now, and we're doing 40, and I'm not doing anything. That's why I like to have my feet under the seat. It's just taking me through here at 40 miles an hour by itself. It's a bit scary, because one day you feel cars won't be allowed to go beyond the speed limits. It's quite happy with those bends being taken at 40, which is fair enough. And let's see what happens when we get to the 50. Will it accelerate us up to 50? Okay, there's a 50 sign, and it's just clocked it now, so we're going. My feet are flat against the little box, and it's such a quick car, we're already there. So okay, now for the bit I've quite literally been waiting for. It's late on a Sunday night, there's not much traffic around, the weather is good, we've got some daylight, so let's put this Mark 8 Golf for its paces on this Jaguar Land Rover test route, and let's start with a particularly sharp bend where a lot of cars will wash out. So let's turn it in, see what it does. That was remarkably tidy. We've got to remember this is just a humble style model on 17-inch wheels, but yeah, it was unbelievable really. A little bit of squeal, but I thought it would have been a lot worse, so that's good. Now we've got multi-link suspension on this car now. You'd have thought if they were really that intent on saving money at Volkswagen, they'd have deleted that and put the torsion beam like Seat do on cars with 150 horsepower. VW at 150 horsepower and above give us multi-link, and that means that we've got super plush ride, but we've got the ability to have a bit of fun on a B road still. Now the ride is very soft, and you don't really notice that until you hit a mid-corner bump, when it becomes a little bit unsettled. But apart from that, you can still have fun on a B road in a very low spec Mark 8 like this one. And not really any point telling you about DSG. You press the button and we've got paddles and it does what you want it to do. The brakes are fine. That's not always the case with hybrids where you get braking creating electricity. Maybe at slow speeds, maybe when it's cold, there's a bit of funniness going on, but on this kind of road right now, it feels perfectly normal. There is a bit of e-boost as well, so you get electricity boosting the torque, and it is a perky car. This car's still only done a few hundred miles, and it's really fun to drive, much nicer to drive than my Leon. There aren't any driving modes that I found, so whilst it does eco stuff by default almost, when you flick a few paddles it feels a bit more connected than the Leon does in eco mode, which is really, really lethargic. So yeah, it's a much easier car to drive because basically it's eco mode when you want it to be, and then you just flick the paddles and you can have a great drive. Yeah, so yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. Okay, well, sadly my time with the Mark 8 Golf is coming to an end. It's been a very interesting 4-day loan. Big thanks to the guys at Inchcape Volkswagen in Cheltenham. Now, judging by the comments on the first impressions video, there are a lot of people who do not like the Mark 8 Golf, and I have to admit I was one of those people, but that was before I got the keys to one and sat inside it, drove it, played with the technology, and now I'm actually a big fan. The main reason for that is my biggest fear that would get scratchy plastics like those in the T-Roc in exchange for technology that we didn't really want has proven unfounded. The quality generally is where you'd expect for a Golf. Yep, some areas have gone down a bit, but some areas have also gone up. And apart from a few little niggles, which I'm sure are just confined to this early production car, it seems as well screwed together as those that came before it. The technology as well is actually really cool. The interfaces are all great. The very adaptable virtual cockpit is superb. And yeah, I'm a big fan. And also it drives really well, which bodes extremely well for the GTI and R models that are due later in the year. And hopefully they will also sort the styling out. Because bearing in mind, this is a basic non-performance spec car. Go and have a look at an R-Line, because it also already looks a lot better than this style model. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth review of the Mark 8 Golf. If you have, as ever, please give it a thumbs up. Please do comment as well. I'll try and reply to as many as possible. And please do share it amongst people you think might be interested. And as ever, please do subscribe. There are way too many views from unsubscribed people, which really isn't going to help me make any more Mark 8 Golf content in the future. I'll see you for the next one soon, guys.